You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. You can reach out to us at soxinthebasement.com. There's many ways to do it. You can leave a voicemail. We get lots of messages. We get people that'll just type one up and send it to me. I cannot answer all of them on the air, but I did want to read this one to start off the show. This episode of Sox in the Basement brought to you proudly by Cork and Carry at the Park, 33rd and Princeton, in the shadow of the ballpark. I will be there pregame. That's my plan on Sunday, because I'm bringing my little guy to the game because he got free tickets. And I'm going to feed him there, and I'm going to have a libation there, and I'm going to spend my money with the small business that sits there in the shadow of the ballpark that services White Sox fans and works hard to do good for White Sox fans instead of spending it with a team that doesn't care about me and lies to me. And we're getting into that on this show today. But check them out, 33rd and Princeton, incredible bar, great food options, great price, hardworking staff, indoor, outdoor seating. See more at corkandcarry.com. Aaron wrote me, "Good day." I love when people start off that way.
Good day.
I like the interesting starts to letters. Like when someone just jump in with something like almost old fashioned with a good day. 36-year Sox fan here. I'm sorry for your pain. Big fan of the show, and I'm always looking forward to the next one. Really wish you guys had a daily. I don't mean to create more work by any means, but I'm just saying it's a struggle, I am sure, to come up with things with how this bleep show of a season is going, but keep up the good work. Like, he starts off with good day, and then he's got a curse word in the middle of it. So he's everywhere, but I love it.
Well, yeah, you go from polite to angry to to contrite. I mean, that's really, he's running the gamut of White Sox fan emotions right now, because I think we all want to be like, polite to each other, but at some point we all just got to cuss.
Right, we're just angry. I always look forward to Monday knowing that I have the Saturday episode to listen to for the start of the week. Appreciate you guys and what you do. Signed, Aaron, who I responded back to because I try to respond back when everybody sends me stuff. Like, if you send stuff in, I try to respond back unless I know I'm going to do it on an episode. But I actually responded back, and then I thought to myself, oh, well, I might as well, also talk about this, because I just wrote back thanks, talked a little bit about Kansas City, because he's a White Sox fan living in Kansas City, where some of the worst baseball fans in the world reside. I was in Kansas City one time. They have this incredible brewery there, not Boulevard. Boulevard's incredible. They have another one there that is constantly slipping my mind. That's on the outskirts of Kansas City, in which the brewing is done in a cave underground. This is like the second...
you talked about this place before.
This is like the second oldest brewery in the country behind Yuengling by like 1 year. Like, of all active breweries, this is the second longest active brewery in the country. But everything is brewed underground, and the tap room is underground. Like, you go down under the earth several stories into like this full bar that's just dug into the ground. It's the coolest thing in the world. It's like you're going down a mine shaft and then suddenly you're in a bar. It's just the neatest place. And I was in there one time while the Royals were playing well, like they have been for the majority of this year. And I want to say that I was talking to somebody and I made some comment about Bruce Chen. And Bruce Chen playing for the Royals, the pitcher, remember him?
Oh, yeah, I remember Bruce Chen, notorious White Sox killer like the rest of the American League.
Exactly. Like, I remember Bruce Chen, and I know he's a notorious White Sox killer, and I'm talking to 3 Royals fans, and they are wearing brand new, crisp, I want to say it wasn't the year that they won the World Series, but the year before when they won the pennant.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And they are wearing brand new hats. They've got their Royals jerseys on. They're feeling good about themselves. And I mentioned Bruce Chen, and one guy looks at the other guy and goes, "Bruce Chen played for the Royals?" And the other guy goes, "I don't know." They have no idea.
How do you not know?
They don't know what they're rooting for out there.
I mean,
I've gone to games there, and there are more people like standing away from where you could see it, like in that center field area. Like, I mean, if you bring a kid there, they're just at a playground in the back, the way I remember it, right? Like, they don't even have the ability to really watch the game like you do if you go up to the kids zone at the rate. So, I mean, they are like a fan base that every time that I engage them, they always shock me with how little they know about their team. Like my former father-in-law, I remember they won the World Series. We were coming back from a trip, and he was watching the kids, and we get back from a trip, and he tells me that morning he's going out to get a hat. And I'm like, well, yeah, you should go get a hat. What the heck? I mean, you go out and get a World Series hat. The moment you get, he's like, oh yeah, I'm going and getting a hat. He's like all excited about it. Big Royals fan, this guy. Comes back with just a regular Royals hat.
Wait, what?
Yeah, because he didn't have one, because he's a fair weather fan. I hate their fan base. I feel bad for Aaron out there in Kansas City dealing with Royals fans. But then again, does he really need to deal with them? Because they just kind of sink back into the background. They're like NPCs of the baseball world. That's what they are.
In case you're wondering, Bruce Chen spent 6 years as a Kansas City Royal. That's 6 full seasons.
They're the worst fan base. Anyway, Aaron did invite me to come out and have barbecue. And if I were to ever go to Kansas City again, I don't know why I would, I will definitely take Aaron up on it. All right, let's get to another guy with Kansas City ties who planned the whole show for me, and that's Chris Getz. And I want to thank him for that, because as Aaron pointed out, it's really hard to put together shows. And Chris Getz decided to talk to the hardworking Chicago beat reporters. And let me tell you something right now. I love the way that the beat reporters following the team wrote his quotes, because they were detailed. I've had conversations in the past with James Fegan. I've had conversations in the past with Scott Merkin. I've talked to several guys on that beat over the years. A lot of them, when they really want the fans to get the feel for the quote, they're not going to write, Chris Getz said something stupid, listen to this. What they're going to do is make sure they write it just perfectly. They're going to get the nuances of the quote because they want you to feel the stupidity coming off the quote. They're not going to get involved. They're not going to sit there and say, like, this was a terrible quote or how could he say that? They're just going to report it. But sometimes they just throw the nugget out there because they know that this is ridiculous what's just been said, and you need to get everything, every comma, every exclamation point, every part of this quote has to be out there for you to absorb. And I noticed that when they were all tweeting it, they were all really close. Like sometimes you see something get said and they're all just a little off. They were all really close. That is a beat that is tired of listening to garbage, and they're making sure you see the garbage. Here's the quote in its entirety. I'll pick one of them. I'm going to go with Merkin. Merkin had it perfectly. Merkin's got Getz talking about the amount of losses this season. He says, if you would have told me we were going to end up flirting with the record, which is the worst, I don't know if that's the most losses, which is the Mets thing, or the worst win percentage, which is the Philadelphia A's.
I think he's talking about the number of losses. That seems to be what most people are focused on.
Right, everybody's focused on that, but you're one game off the pace for the worst winning percentage in the history of baseball, in the entire modern era. You're one game off, and only because you have a win where the Philadelphia A's had a tie. So you're a half game off. You're a half game off the pace for something even worse than the most losses, which is insane to me. Here's Getz. If you would have told me we were going to end up flirting with the record, I would have been a little surprised. You're not flirting, Chris. You're not. You're kicking down the door and you're walking in bare-chested. Now, if you would have told me prior to the year that we would have ended up with over 100 losses, 105, 110, I wouldn't have been as surprised. See how exact that quote is? That is to make sure they want you to see the whole thing the way it was said right there. And the reason they want you to see it is because all these beat reporters had to sit there and listen to Chris Getz talk about how they were probably a 500 team, how he hated his team and he was building it differently. They had to listen to Jerry Reinsdorf walk out and tell them all how Getz was being hired because it would be a quicker turnaround. You had Getz selling in spring training. This was going to be a very different team. Him and Pedro telling you, we're going to be competitive. We may not win the division, but we're going to be different. And now what he's telling you is, you're all a bunch of fools. We always knew we were going to be bad and lose more than 100 games. We always knew we were going to do that. Thanks for the money, season ticket holders, and all of you fools who fell for our garbage in spring training. I mean, when they get to Sox Fest, if they actually do it, because these cowards are probably canceling it. Remember they said they were going to bring it back? When they get back, nobody should let them off the hook in any of those symposiums. If they say something positive, the first response back by a fan standing at the microphone, or if that fan walks away, the next fan there, your responsibility is to say, but you lied to us in spring training in the offseason last year, and then at the end of the season, you told us, I wouldn't be surprised if we lost 100 or 105 or 110.
There will be no symposiums of White Sox general manager Chris Getz out in front of the public or even speaking. Nobody from the team will actually be at a Sox Fest if they throw one. You understand that, right? The best we're going to get is Southpaw. Like that's the highest ranking team representative that they will put at Sox Fest. And he doesn't talk.
Sox in the Basement listeners, switch to a new age of life. Keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living. Maybe you're getting older. You're trying to figure out how to get around the house. You're afraid that you might hurt yourself. You're living alone. It's all about getting around on your own. Living independently. Stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, even bathroom remodeling, all at Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. They work with your insurance and have 0% financing for qualified individuals. And Hyatt also has the latest and greatest in CPAP machines. If you're unhappy with your vendor, switch now. Get supplies directly mailed to you. And if you're down on the south side, stop by the showroom. They have testing rooms and they'll show you all your options you probably don't even know about. They also have the latest in continuous glucose monitors and any medical equipment you can probably think of. See everything Hyatt Home Medical Equipment has to offer at hhme.com. And I would think that what you're going to see in most of these so-called symposiums at a Sox Fest, if it happens, is like a bunch of rookies, a bunch of guys that didn't even play this year that they're trying to tout. That's who they're going to put in front of the crowd because you can't yell at them because they had nothing to do with it.
Right. Yeah, it'll be, you'll be asking Noah Schultz what he thinks, and he'll be sitting there going, I don't know, man, I was in Birmingham. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's what they'll be doing. They'll be bringing. It'll be a lot of young kids, nobody that could be held responsible for what happened, and they'll
the
hide.
mascot,
right? Or they'll have the symposium with guys like Getz, and there's no way they're bringing Jerry out. No way, and it'll be a new manager, right? So the idea will be if Getz were to do a symposium, he sits next to the new manager in the hopes that you'll get those diehards, those people that just always look for hope, to walk up and talk to the manager instead of talking to him.
No, you know what it'll be? It won't even be Getz out there. It'll be Len Casper, who we're not mad at.
Oh yeah, they'll be Len
talking to the new manager.
Yeah,
and that's what you're going to get, realistically.
And it'll be in the smallest room on location. It will not be in a big room.
It will actually be in the women's bathroom.
Because here's the thing: you can't let them off the hook now. You can't. You have to just be angry. You're justified in your anger. Nobody gets away now. I mean, think about this. Then he goes on to talk about how these are the cards he was dealt. This is from Chris Getz. This is the best one. This is from Chris
Getz. Playing solitaire.
Quote, these are the cards we've been dealt at this point. You try to make the best of it. I think it's an opportunity to embrace the situation that we're in. I just want everybody to understand the guy who is in charge of player development in the minors is wondering who dealt him these cards. That's what he's doing. He's out there pontificating. Oh, well, you know what? We got dealt. Not only did it get dealt, but you went into an offseason and said, I hate this team. I'm going to make changes. I'm going to change the way we're doing things.
You went into the offseason saying, I'm going to change the deck.
Right.
Is what you said.
Right. Who dealt me these cards? Who dealt me these cards, Ed?
Well, it's not our fault if you're going to play solitaire, but you're going to leave the Joker and the instructions on how to play canasta in there. I mean, that's what's going to end up happening. And for Getz, this is a guy who I think is proving more and more that at a minimum from the how to deal with the Sox fans perspective and how to deal with the media perspective, he's in way over his head. I don't know yet about talent evaluation. I don't know about, how he's viewed around the league as a general manager, although we're getting a pretty good idea.
But he should never speak.
He really shouldn't, because every time he talks, he either paints himself into a corner like he did by saying that, we're going to, I don't like my team. I'm going to make these changes. We're going to be competitive in 2025. And now that looks impossible, right? That doesn't look like it's even remotely a thing that can happen.
That's what they were trying to sell. Like, we're going to be about a 500 team. We're going to go out there and compete. I mean, credit to everybody jumped on this, right? So I can just have my pick on social media of all the personalities and people who analyze the team and people who follow the team and fans, like how they reacted to those quotes. But I'll pick Courtney Finicum from Baseball Isn't Boring, who's been on this show recently, right? And she wrote, once again, I'm old enough to remember just 1 year ago, Chris Getz and Jerry Reinsdorf both saying they plan on competing in the, quote, weak AL division this year. Remember? This was what we were being sold.
I remember.
And now I wouldn't be surprised if I had 100, 105, 110 losses. And these are the cards I was dealt. We're all just standing around here trying to figure out who did this. Are you kidding me? Like, this is the most gaslighting organization in the history of professional sports organizations. In fact, get them out of just sports. They gaslight like politicians. They're like some shadow government in South America who doesn't have any records and people just disappear. And then they go, no, Bob never existed. Bob and his whole family never lived in this house. This house was knocked down years ago. Like, this is what they are. They're the stuff that comes out of their mouths, and Getz should never speak. It goes back to when he was talking on the Pierzynski show, right? On that pod that they have.
Right.
It's a foul territory.
When AJ got him.
Yeah. And he goes on there and he basically gives the same line that Rick Hahn had been saying for years. And AJ goes, yeah, that's what the last guy said. How are you going to do it? How are you going to earn trust back? Guess what, Getzy? It took Rick Hahn a couple of years to lose everybody's trust. Every time you speak, it gets worse. You know, I've tried to defend this guy. I've sat there and said, like, he wasn't the general manager I wanted. He doesn't have enough experience, but he's bringing in guys from the outside. There's a few things structurally he's changing. I mean, getting rid of Marco Patti made perfect sense, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, all that guy did, all Marco Patti did in international scouting. And James Fox has been on and talked about that as well, because he covers all that stuff for Future Sox, which is also on the Broadcast Basement On Demand Radio Network. James has been on and talked about that before. Like, when you list his names, and people that support Patti were like the guy who found Luis Robert Jr., the guy who found Jose Abreu. Yeah, everybody knew about these guys. Like, he always found the guy that everybody found. But where were the guys who were like 16, 17 years old that he found? I mean, like, I think he may have grabbed Tatis. With all the time he had, he did not have enough successes with guys that weren't already known commodities. So when Getz moves on from him, that's a good move. When Getz brings in Bannister, that's a good move. But every time I try to look at Getz and say, you know what, maybe it's not so bad, he opens his mouth, Ed.
This is the thing, right? We've talked about all the good things that he has done. You know, bringing in Brian Bannister, like you said, good move. Marco Patti, you and I have talked about this. I know I've talked about it a number of times over the course of discussing how do you rebuild a team on this show. That one of the things that the Sox have failed at is that they always push their chips in on the one big name international guy instead of, you know, scouring and picking up all these extra players, all these guys that end up filling out your farm system and becoming what you sustain off of. It's not just done through the draft.
And their currency. They're either something that shows up or they become currency.
Absolutely. They become currency. Exactly. That's what your farm system is. And, you know, it's been such a losing effort for so long on that regard. I mean, 2016 is now a long time ago to have torn it down to the studs and rebuilt a farm system that never made it to the top 10. You know, and when it was at its peak, it was because of Luis Robert Jr. or Yohan Moncada or the obvious guys, right? So Chris Getz still has to show that he can do more than the obvious guys. But the problem with Chris Getz, that he is going to not be able to get past, it just doesn't matter about the talent development, the scouting, the money you spend, how good you are making trades, all of that stuff. The talent evaluation is somewhat secondary at this point to a very, very sensitive and very savvy White Sox fan base who has been spoon-fed. And I'm talking serving spoons, like the ones you use on the other side of the salad tongs, maybe even the forks, maybe even grapefruit spoons because they're jagged. But we have been shoveled loads and loads and loads of fecal matter from this team for years now that Chris, you cannot, and I mean Getz, not Lanuti, but both Chris's, whoever, anybody named Chris who's listening to my voice right now, you cannot, if you're the general manager of the White Sox, you cannot go out and either blow sunshine at us or say stuff like these are the cards we've been dealt, or, you know, any of the stuff that he said, any of the dribble that's coming out of his mouth. You just can't do it.
Sox in the Basement listeners, after this show, give a call to Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor. Located on the corner of 111th and Kedzie, but serving the Chicagoland area, Tom has a get-to-know-you approach and a do-the-right-thing attitude. He's been doing this for decades. It's all about knowing your options when you're investing and planning for your retirement. No matter what stage you are at, it costs nothing to check in with Tom. Give Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor, a call today, 773-779-0023. Edward Jones, member SIPC. When I look at Chris Getz, I am becoming more and more convinced that what we have is a guy who legitimately wants to do good. Like, I don't think there's he's like an evil person who wants the team to suck, right? And actually wants to make the team better, who seems to understand he doesn't know how to do it. Like, at least he has that self-awareness. Like, Hahn thought he was a genius. Kenny Williams thought he was a genius. I don't think Chris Getz thinks he's a genius. I think Chris Getz thinks, I can't believe I convinced this old man to let me be the general manager. And that's why,
entirely possible.
I think that's really what he's doing. And then he's like, okay, now what do I do? And he's trying to figure it out. And I think he's over his head. I really do. I think that's why he goes outside the organization so much. Like, he knows. He knew when he took over that it was a room full of idiots in that front office. He started cleaning things out and bringing in people from outside. He's at least aware of the fact that he has shortcomings and that the team can't do very much with what they have, and they don't have the monetary support of the owner. That's at least a refreshing thing, right? Like, you hope that he just continues to do that. He should go out and he should replace Patty with somebody from outside the organization, and he should continue to look for somebody who's going to be a hitting guru like Bannister is a pitching guru, and it's going to take a little bit of time to build, and that's what he's trying to do. Okay, fine. But the problem is, then he sits down and he tries to come off as, I knew it all along, or I don't worry, I'm in control. And when he does that, he comes across poorly. Like, I've known people in my life who just tell stories. They want you to be happy with them. They want you to like them. They want you to think that they're smart. So when they don't have the answer, they just make up a story. They're essentially lying. And he feels like the kind of guy who forgets what he told you the last time he interacted with you. Like, as if he forgot that he did all that in spring training. Because there's so much BS that gets sprinkled in there to try to make it look like he isn't in over his head. That's where he gets caught up. That's where all of a sudden he says something like that and everybody's like, what, are you kidding me? Or maybe he just needs to have somebody sit down with him and be like, Getsy, it's time to take like a public speaking class and maybe learn a little bit about public relations. Because some of the stuff that you're saying contradicts messages put out by the team, and everybody's going to remember that. Because he's not existing in a vacuum anymore. Like, a Chris Getz maybe survives and doesn't get called out as much 20 years ago before the blogging and the podcasting space opens. Like, most teams don't even have as many people that cover the team independently as the White Sox. If you look around in the marketplace, there are some teams that have one or two independent podcasts. We have so many of them right now, it's ridiculous. It makes absolutely no sense. There's a ridiculous amount of people that are giving opinions, and we're part of it, and are covering the team. Now, we do that because local media has always just disappeared covering the White Sox during the offseason, put the Cubs in front of the White Sox overall. The team doesn't really put their players out there. They don't really do a very good job of marketing them and getting them in front of the fan base, and a void exists. And because of that void, we exist. And you cannot do this kind of crap when you have that many people in this organic grassroots marketplace that covers White Sox baseball. You can't do that because you're not going to get away with it. You might have been able to get away with it 20, 30 years ago when it was a small pool of beat reporters and they had till the next day to write their story, and you could catch up to them later and try to clarify before the story went to print. And it was just the broadcasters that were on the 10 o'clock news, and maybe you had a 6 p.m. local as well. And the radio stations weren't immediately live feeding in your press conferences and your stuff. You had to wait. You had to wait for the clip. And PR guys could stand around next to the general manager and try to clarify his stuff before stuff went over the air. It doesn't work that way anymore. Now you got to be sharp enough to remember what you said 6 months ago. And this team gets caught in lie after lie after lie, and just you see them gaslighting their fan base, and you see that there is so much confusion over what they are and what they're going to do. And it kills all your hope for next year before this year's even over, Ed.
Well, here, I agree with you. You can't get away with it anymore, as you described. But this team has been so full of it that I don't think they could have gotten away with it 20, 30 years ago. I don't think Chris Getz gets away with coming out in spring training and declaring his team as, new and improved and going to try and compete. And we're really going to be competitive next year. We know this year's not going to be, it's going to be rocky, but it's not going to be terrible. I mean, if you come out in spring training this year and you say, look, I have no idea what we've got right now, and this could be something that we could catch some lightning in a bottle and be interesting, or we could be really, really bad. And then at this point of the year, you go, yeah, well, that's the cards we've been dealt. Turns out everything went really, really bad. So it sucks and I got a lot of work to do. You do that. That's all you had to do. And 20, 30 years ago, now, 1955, I don't care when it is, everyone sits there and goes, yeah, fair play to Chris Getz. At least he's self-aware and he understands that this was a bad year. This is a bad team and he's got a lot of work to do. Okay. But, going through and trying to, like you say, tell a story, make yourself sound like one of us, make yourself sound like, tell us what we want to hear so we think you're cool. That doesn't work, okay? That's the kid whose Canadian girlfriend is in Winnipeg one day, and then she's from Ontario the next day, and then for some reason she's actually from England the third day because that person doesn't know geography.
Aha! He doesn't have a girlfriend. That's fake.
Exactly. You don't have a fake girlfriend.
That's why I keep a database of everything I say about my fake girlfriend, so I can just that's what I do.
You have been remarkably consistent over the years. You just get the pictures wrong from time to time. Your Photoshop skills are terrible, my friend. That's where we are, right? These are the cards that we've been dealt. Is we've got a team that doesn't respect their fans. Right now, we've got a general manager who I think wants the fans' respect, but doesn't know how to get it. Doesn't know what to do when he's not sitting at home plate and getting a 2-out RBI double to get us behind him. Because
tell the truth. That's what he should have said was, look, I got in here. I felt like there were certain things that we needed to address. I tried to address them. It didn't work out. And that's why the manager isn't here anymore. And that's why we're making changes as quickly as we can. And it is extremely disappointing. And I don't want this team to finish this way. And I hope that they have a little personal pride in going out there as professionals to get a couple more wins so they don't break this record. Maybe Luis Robert Jr. can do something. I mean, over the last 15 days, he's hitting 204. Like, there's no spark whatsoever out of this guy, and he's supposed to be this otherworldly, the next Mike Trout guy. Well, this is ridiculous. It's sad to look at. It's sad to see. And what are you doing with these infielders? Like, what are you doing with all of them? They're all terrible. Ramos comes up, and you wait forever to get him in there. I don't understand it. Like, are you playing Lenin Sosa so that when you get to the end, you know whether or not you want to DFA him? Are you playing Nicky Lopez so much because you just want to know for sure I'm going to get rid of him? Like these are all like last chances, last gasp. I don't know what you're doing. But what I would like to hear is, look, we haven't broken the record yet. I would like to see some personal pride out of these guys because some of them won't be back on this team if they think they're going to mail in the next 3 weeks. Where's that at?
That's a better statement than doing the math on losses.
Why are you trying to come across as this is what I always thought was going to happen, so it isn't that bad? Why are you doing that? You fired your manager. You could easily sit there and say, guys, we had an idea. I sat down and talked with Pedro, all the powers that be. We got together. Some of this stuff worked. We see some improvements with pitching. We got some good young pitching. It's going to be a focal point of this team for the next couple of years. We try to go defense, but unfortunately, we're not getting enough offense out of our players. That's why Eloy Jimenez left. Yoan Moncada's sitting down in the minor leagues, and he took his sweet time getting better, and that's why he's going to stay in the minor leagues, because that seems really obvious. Start pinning it on other people. It's okay, Getzy. You can sit there and say, this is a problem. This was a problem here. That's why we got rid of Page. That's why we made a change at the manager and we're going to look at something else. That's why we're going to pivot and we're going to go in a different direction in how we construct our team. We found things that worked. We found things that didn't. And this team should be playing a little bit harder instead of just accepting the fact that they're going to be the worst team in baseball history. Because when September started, they were on pace for it. But if they went 500, they'd be nowhere near it. Just play with a little personal pride. Why isn't he saying stuff like that? Instead, he's trying to act like, well, this is what we always thought it was going to be. So, no harm, no foul. And he's trying to come across as somebody who's not disappointed because it's as if he's trying to cover up his shortcomings. We all have shortcomings. Every single fan who's watching this team has been fired from a job or lost a girlfriend or stubbed their toe or crashed their car or had a bad day at work. Be a human being and say you screwed up. We would respect it more. I think Southsiders would respect it more instead of this rah-rah crap I get from the TV broadcast and him trying to pretend that he always knew it was going to be bad. Okay, be a human being. That if you want to know what people from this area, fans of this team who've gone through this terrible 40-year run with this awful, miserly owner who gaslights his fan base constantly. Be honest and we'll love you. Be honest.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found and always on soxinthebasement.com.